Sound of Freedom beats Taylor Swift? That's the story today on Afterthoughts. Hard to believe? We'll check out the year-end numbers for the little film that could, Sound of Freedom, on the other side. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Afterthoughts, the YouTube series where we explore all things related to Christians, creatives, and culture. Tim Risto here, host of the Creative Christians podcast, welcoming you back to the first new episode of the new year. Happy New Year, y'all. Hope it's a great start for you. Since we've been looking at Christian films and Christian filmmaking, and I'm getting ready to prep the new episode of the Creative Christians podcast all about Christian films or inspirational films or faith-based films, however you want to say it. I've been keeping up with a lot of stories related to this subject matter. And a day or two ago, over on DailyWire, an article popped up about the film that we've been following a lot of lately because it's one of the more recent films and it's one of the big hits, Sound of Freedom. And so I thought we'd take a quick look at that today. I may include some of this in the podcast episode, I may not, but that's what Afterthoughts is all about. So we get to review some of it here in more detail than I would even if I do include it in the podcast. So let's pop on over here to Daily Wire and take a look at what they've got to say about Sound of Freedom here in the new year. So from January 2nd here in the new year over at dailywire.com, article by Katie Jerkovich titled Sound of Freedom beats Taylor Swift to finish in top 10 at 2023 domestic box office. Sound of Freedom beat out Taylor Swift's The Eras Tour movie to finish in the top 10 of 2023 box office tallies domestically. I don't need to remind you that's not a small feat to do. The independent film from Angel Studios, which deals with the horrors of human trafficking, made it into the top 10 grossing films of the year domestically after earning $184 million plus by the end of the year, Christian Headlines reported. It just edged out Swift's concert film, which landed in the 11th spot after it scored $179 million per box office Mojo. So if we go over there real quick, there we can see Sound of Freedom here at Box Office Mojo, number 10, Taylor Swift there at number 11. Pretty amazing. The numbers are close, but there's still a significant difference there. You can see Barbie number 1, Super Mario Brothers 2, Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Oppenheimer, Little Mermaid, Avatar, Ant-Man, and John Wick. Chapter 4 ahead of Sound of Freedom. Look over here at Sound of Freedom. Domestic of 184 million, international 64 for a total of nearly 250 million worldwide. Pretty impressive numbers for what I'm calling the little film that could. All right. And Angel Studios, who's distributing the film, of course, has been distributing the film, is, of course, promoting it big time. Sound of Freedom is America's number one movie, taking the top spot at the box office on Independence Day. This was back when it was released in theaters. All right, Sound of Freedom is based on a true story of Tim Ballard, played by actor Jim Caviezel, federal agent who quits his job and embarks on a dangerous mission to rescue a young girl from sex slavery in South America. The movie comes from the same studio responsible for the popular faith-based television series The Chosen. The film became the sleeper hit of the summer after it opened in select theaters across the country on July 4th and ended up earning $19 million at the box office opening weekend. Here's where it really gets interesting to review. The movie beat out films with much larger budgets, like the next installment of the Indiana Jones franchise, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which earned $174 million for Disney, which was appallingly low. Indiana Jones cost like $330 million at least production budget, and then it had a marketing budget of at least $150 million or more. So it was an extremely expensive movie, one that I found wasn't very good, very disappointed by it. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. So to beat out a major franchise movie like that is huge. And Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which finished the year earning $172 million domestically, the outlet noted. Its success also makes it the highest grossing independent film since 2019's Parasite. That's pretty cool as well. Producer Edward Versteegwe previously told Fox and Friends he put his life on hold over the last 8 years into making the film. I put my life in this movie because this movie is bigger than ourselves, Versteegwe said. I was praying to God for an angel to come and rescue this film, he added. And what are the odds that from all the studios, the one that picked this movie is called Angel Studios? Nice. Topping the list of domestic box office winners of 2023 was, as I just noted, Barbie, Super Mario Brothers, Spider-Man, etc. So kind of neat to see where Sound of Freedom finished the year here with box office numbers domestically. Pretty significant. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up here is in the podcast episode of Creative Christians, where I'm going to talk about Christian films, we're going to look at budgets. We're going to look at box office. We're going to look at small films versus big films. We're going to be talking about this subject quite a bit because this movie here is, I firmly believe, going to set a trend for Christian filmmaking, faith-based filmmaking moving forward. This is not a small thing. The fact that it was made for only, I think it was 14 million, 15 million, 16 million, somewhere in there. And that's the production budget. I don't believe that includes any marketing costs. Marketing, though, was minimal. It's nothing like, where Indiana Jones had to be 100, 150 million, 200 million marketing costs. This film had nothing like that. And while I haven't seen marketing numbers specifically for that, I know they were minimal, and it largely was carried by word of mouth and by probably online word of mouth as well. So I'd be curious to see those numbers, but I don't think they're going to do anything to sway the fact that the film was made for a minimal amount of money, a decent amount. Again, when you watch Sound of Freedom, it looks like it could have been made for twice that, $30, $40 million. They used the budget well. And I'm sure the same thing is true of the marketing of the film, too, that whatever money was put into that, minimal by comparison, but that they used it well. They really allowed word of mouth to carry the film, to give it the momentum it needed to be word to spread about it, and obviously believed in the film enough to know that the story and the quality of the film would carry it as it did. So what does this portend for the future of Christian films and Christian filmmaking? I think we're going to see a lot more films follow the Sound of Freedom pattern, in the sense that I think you're going to see films be able to secure some better budgets, either with more people investing, maybe more of this crowdfunding type approach to investing, or securing better corporate investors or things like that, knowing that you can see box office results like this. Now, this isn't new to Christian films per se, but this film really has kind of broken a barrier. Secondly, I think what this does, and I've talked about this before, is the way that it handles the subject matter is both intense but also very sensitive, and it isn't overly preachy. And I think you're going to see films working to get the message across in a similar way, because it comes across very grounded and very natural, as opposed to a lot of other films in the past decades, Christian films, in particular sometimes get a little too preachy, and you end up tuning out a lot of the audience that you could otherwise embrace or bring into your messaging. Now, by that, let me clarify, I don't mean that we shouldn't have strong Christian messages or that we can't be overt in our gospel message in films. I'm just saying that I think that even that way can be done in a much more grounded, realistic manner than perhaps has been done in the past. Sometimes the overly preachiness, when I say that, I mean that a lot of the dialogue and things, and Christian films have been criticized for this in the past, just comes across as unrealistic. People don't normally talk that way in real life. So the more you can kind of have the Christian message come across, and it can be, straightforward, but it just needs to be in a way that sounds like the way people talk, and that gives a sense of, I can see, the viewer, I can see myself in that conversation, or I can relate to the people in this film. So I think you're going to see more of that approach too. I hope we do, because that bodes very well for the future of Christian filmmaking. But interesting story here to see the year-end box office results for Sound of Freedom. We'll continue to follow this as it goes onto home video as well, which it's now on Blu-ray and DVD. I got a copy for Christmas. So we'll follow those numbers too, although those won't significantly affect the profit margin so much, but we'll follow to see how popular that is, both on Blu-ray, DVD, and streaming as well too, and keep an eye on that story. And we're going to start to follow a lot of other films too, see how they do. Angel Studios is doing a lot right now, so we will be following them a little more in depth, as well as some other studios that are producing Christian films as well. Anyway, just wanted to follow up on this story. We'll talk more about this in the upcoming episode of the Creative Christians podcast, all about Christian films, which will be out sometime this month. So keep an eye on The Sound of Freedom, and if you haven't watched it yet, definitely check it out. It is a good film. I got Blu-ray for Christmas, so I've watched that already. It looks really, really good on Blu-ray. This is just a good film. It's well done, well written, well produced, well acted, quality production. I hope we see a whole lot more films like this in 2024 and going forward. Christian films, faith-based films, inspirational films like this, because these type films I'll go to see for sure. And obviously, the numbers speak to others doing that as well. So anyway, that's it from me for today. Have a great rest of your day. And remember, stay in God's Word. Also, if you have not heard the Creative Christians podcast, please head on over to my Buzzsprout page. The link is on screen now, and it's also in the description below. Check it out. It's all about Christians and creatives and how their faith influences their work and creativity. Well worth checking out. You can also go to Apple Podcasts or any other podcast distributor. We are all over the place. Just search for Creative Christians and Tim Risto.